You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the 42 Cast, your ultimate answer to fandom, geekiness, and everything. As always, I am your host, Nathan, and we have another great episode lined up for you where we're talking about Cobra Kai. Before we get started, just a little bit of house cleaning. This episode was recorded when there were only 5 seasons of Cobra Kai. I realize that the 6th season has started, the first 5 episodes have dropped. I have not seen those, but I did want to get this episode out before any more of Season 6 drops. And I realize that it's a little bit late, but hopefully you'll just bear with us, because mostly this episode is valid because it is just a review of the first 5 seasons, and anything that we get wrong about speculation of what's going to come in the final season that has already been addressed in those first 5 episodes, then oh well, bad on us. But without further ado, here is the episode already in progress. Let's meet our cast for this week. So, starting off, it's been a hot minute since he's been on the show. He will definitely talk to you about geek fitness and why it matters while he's folding the characters from this show into a pretzel, and that is Jeff Muller. How are you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing fine. I will talk your ear off about fitness and martial arts. I feel like this episode was made for me specifically, so I'm happy to be here.
Good. So yeah, it's. I think it's been since the Iron Fist season 1 episode since you've been on the show.
Oh my God, you're right. You're right.
So what have you been doing in like the last 4 years?
Time is a concept that doesn't seem to matter anymore. It's just one of those things. I've been getting older, more gray hair on my face, still folding people up on the regular, and just trying to keep up with all the geek stuff that's out there. Even during COVID times, I found myself a lot of times floundering, trying to keep up with stuff. But Cobra Kai is definitely one show that was, I had to watch it when it came out. Like there was no waiting, there was no putting it on a shelf. Kind of love it. Looking forward to digging it.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Anytime I see like a meme with sharks and stuff, I think about you, Jeff.
Stop it. So does everyone. And I've been reminded constantly as the private messages and the tags and everything else are constantly flowing in, trying to trigger my sharkophobia.
All right. It's great to have you back on the show, Jeff. All right. Next up, we have another alumnus from the Iron Fist episode, although he's been on some lately, more recently. And that is my buddy, Eric McCracken. How are you doing, Eric?
I'm doing well. And yourself?
I'm doing all right. So yeah, what's been going on for you since the last time you were on, Eric?
Not much. Just geeking and working, raising the kiddo.
Yeah. Well,
she just
those are good things.
She just started first grade. She's super excited. It's fun to watch her get excited.
Time is a flat circle because wasn't she just born like a little while ago?
about 7 years, yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't feel like 7 years. But
it does not, no.
Oh, it's good to have you back on the show, Eric.
Good to be back.
All right, and finally is a voice you've been hearing a lot lately. He is our resident Don Knotts impersonator, and that is Steven. How are you doing, Steven?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
It's never going to get old.
One day I'm going to do a whole episode like that.
That's right. That's right. Yes, that's the challenge. I want you to do a whole episode as Don Knotts.
That is the goal. That is on the horizon. So keep listening. One day it'll happen.
All right.
Yeah, I'm doing all right. I'm raising the kiddo. We have my youngest is home. He's turning 24 tomorrow. So. Well,
still raising
the other end of the spectrum, but
right.
Glad to be celebrating with him and doing a bunch of shows. I did a show for a festival called Yippie Fest in Chicago. We got it was a collection of 3 10-minute plays. I was in 2 of them. We got them up and running in 2 weeks, which was a good challenge to see if I can do such a thing. And they went really well. I'm currently in rehearsals. I don't know when this airs, but currently in rehearsals for Puffs, which will be in Woodstock, and that's been a lot of fun. That'll go up in October, or went up in October and was wildly successful, depending on how when this airs. So
back to time being a flat circle.
Exactly. So I've been keeping busy show-wise.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I will forever be disappointed that I missed your Scooby-Doo show where you played Don Knotts.
Well, I'm sure there'll be more Don Knotts. I may try to work in some Don Knotts into the Puffs production where people will least expect it. So, because it's kind of, if you're not familiar with Puffs, it's sort of a parody of Harry Potter, and so there's a lot of fluidity of where you can kind of throw things in, it built into the script. So I may throw a Don Knotts in there somewhere.
Well, that's very cool. It's good to have you back on the show, Stephen.
Thanks for having me.
All right. So those of you who have been listening for a while know that this is usually where the 5-minute controversy goes, but we didn't have a controversy this week, so we're just going to skip that. But before we start talking about Cobra Kai, we are going to pause for a promo from another fine podcast, and then we are going to get back to talking, or we are going to get to talking about Cobra Kai.
Hey, Joe.
Hey, Tony.
Do you like ads about podcasts?
You know it.
How about ads about Doctor Who podcasts?
Even better.
Well, you're in luck, because this is an ad about a Doctor Who podcast.
Wow, I love it.
And you'll love us, the Watchathon of Rassilon, a podcast about Doctor Who.
I'll buy 12.
Actually, it's free.
I'll buy 13 then.
And we're back. And like we mentioned at the top of the show, we are talking about Cobra Kai, the series on Netflix. Well, actually, it started on YouTube when YouTube was trying to make original content or something. And a friend of mine tried to get me to watch it then, and just sounded kind of just weird to watch original programming on YouTube. I don't know. So it took me a while to get into this. But my wife and I binged through. Well, first we watched the Karate Kid movies. Because I had seen bits and pieces of them, but I had never seen all 3 movies. So we watched the Karate Kid movies, and then we watched the 5 seasons of Cobra Kai. And I was like, wow, this is much better than I was really expecting. So I was like, I got to talk about this show. So that's sort of my path coming to this. But I'm curious, for everybody on this panel, like, were you fans of the Karate Kid series in the 80s, and then did you jump right on this, or how did you get to this? So I see a lot of nodding from Jeff, so I'm gonna have you start us off, Jeff.
Look, I am an 80s kid, right? So, I was prime age when the first Karate Kid came out. I saw it in the theater. It was the perfect 80s movie for the age I was. I don't remember exactly how old I was, maybe 12, 13, somewhere in there.
It came out in 84, if that helps.
I was 12. So it hit perfect. I saw most of the other movies in I think all of them except for the Hilary Swank one I saw in the theater. And then, it's the only reason I joined that YouTube Premium was strictly to watch this show. I was with you. I was like, there's no way they're going to get me to do original programming. Right. And then I saw the ads for this, and I was like, son of a, they got me, and I was in day one, and haven't missed, it's just, as soon as it comes out, I'm on it. So the good stuff.
All right. And Stephen, what about you?
I have I'm a little older than Jeff, so I'm so definitely around in the 80s. And yet I had a different path, because I did not, and still have not, seen any of the Karate Kid movies. It's on my list. Especially after watching the show, I'm like, no, I have to. I know it's
the first one especially is really, really good. Like I'll tell you,
I've heard the first two are good, and then after that, it kind of tails off. But they're on my list now. But yeah, I for whatever reason, and it's not because I didn't. It's not because there wasn't. I just I had laundry to do that day. I don't know. It's just I did not. I just didn't happen to see them, and still haven't. And my friend Pete, when back in the YouTube Red days, was trying to tell me, I get a subscription, you have to watch the show. And I was like, I'd never even seen Karate Kid. Why would I join YouTube Red just to watch this? So I put it off for a while until it came onto Netflix. And then when it's on Netflix, I'm like, oh, I've heard this is good. So my wife and I started watching it and got hooked right away and have been powering through and just waiting for each season to drop. So I'm the voice that is hooked on the show and still haven't seen the movies that it comes from.
Okay. And what about you, Eric?
I love Jeff's face right now. We need video for this just so people can see Jeff's face.
Yes. Jeff looks like a vampire that's just seen sunlight. Let's put it that way.
I just don't understand how this show makes any sense to you.
I can't explain
I'm fascinated to hear your take.
Okay, good, because I'll explain that. But
well, like in his defense, though, with all of the actual stock or actual footage that they took from the first movie, he could probably say he's seen it now.
No, they've shown stock footage from all three movies.
That's true.
Well, I'm a little different than our two other guests because I'm significantly younger than them. I was 1 year old when the movie came out, so obviously I didn't see it in the theater. I was introduced to the series through the NES game, which was terrible, but that was my introduction to the series. I have seen all three of the Ralph Macchio movies. I've seen the Hilary Swank and the terrible reboot movie that came out recently with Jackie Chan. Can't even really call that one Karate Kid, Kung Fu Kid. But I did thoroughly enjoy the movies and interested to see what everybody's opinion of the TV show is.
All right. Yeah, no, I will point out. Yeah, I will say that I did watch the Hilary Swank one too. And that's mainly because of the performance of Pat Morita as Mr. Miyagi in those movies was so good that I was like, at the very least, I'll give this a try just to watch him, because I really enjoyed him and his character so much in these. And that's of course what you don't get in Cobra. Even though Cobra Kai has surprisingly dipped deep into the well to pull out like just about every character they can from these movies. Obviously Pat Morita passed away, so they can't have him in the show, but I have been kind of surprised that it's like, oh, you're going to have everybody from the movies. Okay. I'm fine with this ride. But yeah, okay. So, I'm kind of curious, because one of the things that surprised me about this show was that it works on a lot of different levels. So I guess just to start out, just to get us talking about what we like about this show, what are the things that really speak to you in Cobra Kai? So let's start with you on this one, Stephen, because you do have since you haven't seen the movies, I'm most interested in sort of your take on this.
So how did I come? Well, and yeah. I will say, having not seen the films, I have been alive in society. So I know of, I know Ralph Macchio's character. I knew, that Johnny was the bad guy. I knew the basic beats of, who those characters were. But it's just those broad beats. So the thing I think that hooked me right away was starting with the Johnny character and starting to base the show around him, and not as it'd be such an easy thing to be to take the ex-jock thing, like the guy who's sort of been defined by the sports in high school or whatever, and, defined by the sporting event and couldn't get over it. And they kind of took that a step that I didn't expect, where it was not only something that defined his life, but limited his life.
Mm-hmm.
And that was interesting. And then the dichotomy of playing against that constant reminder of Ralph Macchio's character, that was a really interesting place to start. And that hooked me right away because I in Zeitgeist, I knew who those characters were. So that angle grabbed me right away. And then as the show develops, it keeps taking characters who I get the impression, now tell me if I'm wrong, but I got in the Zeitgeist that Karate Kid is basically sort of, good guys and bad guys. There's a lot of good guys and bad guys in Karate Kid. It's not a lot. And they really play with that paradigm and bring the shades of gray in a way that does not violate who these characters are.
Eric, why don't you say what you really like? What are the prime things that excite you about Cobra Kai? What's gotten you into it?
Well, like my favorite part about the show is they really, really leaned into the meme that Daniel illegally won the tournament. Like that's been like a huge thing on the internet. Like they've been talking about it for years, that he won the tournament with a kick to the face, which should have been a null point. But and I like remember thinking about that when I saw the movie the first time. I was like, well, how did he win? That shouldn't have scored a point. But I like how they kind of leaned into that, and just it's teaching the same lessons that the first movie taught, but differently, and that's kind of interesting too. Almost like the same lesson from a different angle.
Yeah. Like one of the things that really surprised me is how much they've showcased that success has made Daniel kind of a douchebag. Like there have been quite a few instances where like Daniel has done things where everybody is just like, dude, like you have taken it up to 15 where it didn't need to go there, and I was kind of surprised because I figured that they would have Daniel be like pure of spirit and mind and like this really great person and everything, and I'm like, no, he's very flawed. And
Daniel was always a douchebag,
right?
So there we go.
Well, yeah,
I'll say it.
like that was part of the meme too, that like Daniel is the villain, and like Daniel 100%. Is the villain. He is the true bully of the first Karate Kid. And like that's just interesting that they took a property like that and then ran the opposite direction with it, and that's cool.
All right, so Jeff, what do you appreciate about this show?
I think I'm going to echo the same things. Like what hooked me, I went into it cautious and then immediately was hooked with the brilliance of them taking a meme and turning it into a show. Daniel is the villain. Let's look at it from the other side of the coin, the other person's perspective, because it's basically taking that adage of, there's two sides to every story, and then there's the truth. So we saw the one from Daniel's side. Now we get to see everything, at least in the first season, at the beginning, from Johnny's side. And I thought that was really interesting. And then what hooked me was the fact that, and I'm sure we're going to get into the cast and everything else as we go, but Billy Zabka really, like, what's the phrase? He understood the assignment. Like it was very clear. He knew what he was making, and it really hooked me. I was like, man, it was genuine. Like I was like, oh, okay, they know what they're doing. This isn't just a cash grab. They're really trying to dig into some stuff, and they're really having fun with it. And that it just hooked me.
There was a cameo in How I Met Your Mother, where Barney was getting married, and he was really excited to meet the real Karate Kid. And like they brought in Ralph Macchio and William Zabka, and like they kind of talked about what would become the plot of Cobra Kai for 5 minutes or whatever. So like I firmly believe that those two cameos in that show is what birthed this show, and that's just kind of cool.
Yeah, like I say, going from the movie straight into this, I really loved all of, just how they played with the characters and the continuity and how they've made so much of it matter. Like even the third movie, which, from fandom, everybody hates the third movie and whatever. I have a slightly different take, but they've brought in, Silver and all of that, and they started making that matter too, where it's just like, this whole thing and how they've had it play out has been so fascinating. But the other thing that I think is really neat about their show is, like, if you look on it as like it's this examination of generational trauma and how, like, all these parental figures have basically like put all of their issues into the younger generation, and it's now, Johnny and Daniel as parents, and them realizing that they're starting to put their issues into their kids and trying to, work against that to various degrees. And even like, I mean, and so we define parents also fairly loosely because, we have some people who are parental figures to people who aren't actually their kids and, stuff like that. But it's still like the idea of these are generations and this is how this trauma is passing down, and, this sort of examination of, like, what do we do to our kids, and, like, how do we sort of break those cycles and stuff like that. And I was like, that's a lot deeper than I was expecting them to go in this show, which I expected to just be like Cobra Kai bad, Daniel and whatever kids he assembles will be good, and like we'll just play that out. And it's just like, oh, okay, like this is going for a much meatier show, and I really appreciate it. And I really like how they've made so many things matter. Like they even pulled, I forget his name, but they even pulled like the kid from the third movie that Daniel was supposed to fight, and they pulled him into a few episodes in the fifth season. It's just like, okay, this is really cool. So yeah, like I really like it, and I really like that they understand that a lot of the people that are watching this are people who grew up in the 80s, and so they bring a lot of 80s aesthetics into this show.
It's a nostalgia fest. 100%.
Yes.
100%. They know what they're doing, and
right,
it's working.
Exactly. The music, the styling, like so many things are just like, oh man, I feel just so comfortable watching this because it's like speaking to my childhood while understanding that the world has moved on. And so a lot of the things in there are sort of discussions of, not only just the technology thing, and of course Johnny's complete lack of understanding of anything that has happened since the 80s is one of like the funniest like parts of the show. But but also just, understanding that a lot of like the culture has moved on and everything, but still giving us all that nostalgia for those of us who are from that era. So love that too. So yeah, let's talk about Johnny, because he's the central figure in the first season, like we've mentioned, and has remained kind of the heart of the show, I think, throughout. So what do you think about how Johnny's depicted in this, Jeff?
I like it because while it is a flip side, they don't shy away from showing the fact that he's, a very flawed individual. Mm-hmm. He's got a ton of problems. And it takes him a while. Well, let me rephrase. When he realizes he has problems, it takes him a while to do it. But there's still blind spots in his self-realization mirror, if you will. Mm-hmm. And I really appreciate the care that they're taking with his character. And I almost feel like the writers have him dialed in much better than Daniel, who I think kind of waffles here and there. And some of it's Ralph Macchio's performance, I think, but some of it's the writing as well. I think with Johnny, like he's dialed in from episode 1 and hasn't wavered. Mm-hmm. And I really appreciate the fact that they're letting him just be himself, warts and all. Not trying to clean it up. I think in terms of the main characters, he is the standout across the board to me.
Yeah, he's a mess. he's just now a mess that realizes he's a mess and is trying to do better. But they haven't just had him go like, oh, like he's, clean and everything's like great for him now.
Right. And that's the thing, is like he's trying to do better and yet he falters. So in a lot of ways, I feel like this show is a CW show with karate. In a lot of the way it is, it's like, hey, let's get the prettiest people we can get, regardless of how well they can act. And let's, let's throw them in here and have them, duck face at the camera way too long sometimes and things like that.
Yeah.
But unlike a CW show where I realize I did wrong and now I'm completely turned around in 30 seconds, like he keeps stumbling over himself over and over, which, as unrealistic as this show is, that's super realistic because no one can change on a dime. And I think it's great that they're showing that. Like he's trying his best, and half the time his best isn't good enough.
Yeah, it is funny that he has like sort of this lack of awareness of things about like his toxic masculinity and some of those things. Like his way to try and rehabilitate Miguel, like, like when he's paralyzed and everything, it's just like ridiculous, but
So good.
I mean, it's fun to watch, but like, and he has these blind spots about some aspects of it, but every time he realizes that he's done wrong, like he always like brings a sort of genuine thing. And that's what I try to tell my wife, because at the beginning my wife was like, why are they spending so much time with Johnny? Johnny's this bad person, blah blah blah. And I'm like, because he showed us in the first movie that he had a conscience. Like when Kreese tells him to sweep the leg, and Daniel was already hurt, like he didn't want to do it. And so I'm like, Kreese has been this bad influence on him, but he was never someone that really was as ruthless as he pretended to be, and and so it's like they're trying to show us that he is a redeemable figure, and he's somebody that just needs to go through this journey. And so like I've appreciated like everything that they've done with him. I think it's been a great thing to watch while keeping some of those fun like sort of foibles and things that he has that just make it amusing. Now she's totally into it, but for the first few episodes I did kind of have to convince her that no, just keep watching. I think this is going to turn around. Everybody loves this show. But Eric, what do you think about Johnny?
He's easily my favorite part of the show. Like when I heard that the show was coming, I was like already rooting for him. And like, and yeah, like you both said, he's a flawed character. He's not afraid of his flaws. In fact, he leans into them, maybe too much. But he's a guy that had one bad moment in his upbringing, and it basically ruined him for the rest of his life, and he just never recovered from it. And it's cool to see his like come to the realization that he put himself in the situation that he's in, and he has to pull himself out, but the only thing that he has to rely on is the bad values that he learned from his karate teacher. And so it's like it's probably a bad analogy, but if Batman only had bad tools to do his job, how would he do it? Like it, kind of like that.
Yeah, I mean, and Johnny exhibits all like the signs of an abuse victim because Kreese is able to just worm his way right. I was like, he was trying to kill you after the tournament. Like, it's like, but Kreese is able to worm his way back and everything because Johnny wants to believe that this person that he looked up to as a father figure, has changed, in the same way that Johnny has come to realizations and has changed. He feels like Kreese, should have those same, sort of things, and he wants to give them that chance and everything. And I was like, the whole time I was just shaking my head because I was like, I don't think that you're getting what you're going to get what you want out of this. And but it's a very real thing. It's a very real thing that happens to people who are in these sort of abusive cycles. And so yeah, that's again, I like that this show like looks at that stuff. But we talked a bit about Daniel. Anything to add about Daniel, Eric, from what we said earlier?
Again, I really liked how they leaned into the whole Daniel is the villain. And like especially in that first season, those first couple episodes, like I just hated Daniel. And like I knew he was supposed to be the hero from the old journey, but that journey's over. And now he's kind of a dick. And like his kids too. Oh man. Especially his son. Like, oh, I just wanted to punch that kid every time he was on the screen.
Right. His son who became a bully. Why Daniel just assumes that, oh, my kid is just perfect, like he wouldn't do anything like that. And Daniel's become the rich, entitled people that he used to hate. And I don't know if it's supposed to be because Mr. Miyagi's been dead for over a decade, or if it's just because of the money or whatever, but it's like he's kind of lost his way. And they don't focus on Daniel as a villain, but it does seem like that's the way they're going in the first season. And then they kind of, over the seasons it becomes a lot more nuanced than that.
It like they never really explained how he came into all of his money. Like, I know he's
the best car salesman in the world.
Right, but I'm more leaning into the fact that he probably sold that car that Miyagi gave him in the first movie, because that was a really nice, old, expensive car. And he used that to kind of like get himself famous. So like, at least how I'm picturing it in my own head canon is like, he didn't even put in the hard work to get all the money he's got. That was also gifted to him, and that kind of just leans into him being a douchebag.
Didn't that car show up though in one of the seasons?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it does show up in one of the scenes, so I don't think
like season 3 or something like that. Yeah,
because he worships Mr. Miyagi. Like they go into his room and it's like opening like the tomb or whatever. Like nobody's been in there since Mr. Miyagi died and whatever. Like he's tried to leave everything pristine. Yeah,
but I think it kind of. But I think the how he got rich thing, I think, leans into the ridiculousness of the premise of the show and the movies, in that the karate champion is the biggest star of the valley, like a local crappy karate tournament. You're a star for the rest of your life. He's a celebrity in town because he kicked someone in the face once in a really bad karate tournament. Like, it's that part I don't bump into at all. I just look at that and go, yeah, of course, it makes complete sense in a world where there's 0 cops. Karate solves everything. There's brawls all in the street. No one cares. The karate guy is a celebrity. He's rich. Sure, he sold a lot of cars. I'm fine with that part.
Hey, Jeff, I want you to talk about not doing any karate in 30 years and drinking beers all the time and not practicing, and then just being able to do everything that you used to do. That's pretty realistic, right?
Okay, let's not confuse entertainment with realism, because, and this is going to hurt. Here's the 5-minute controversy. Karate's nonsense. Period. None of it works. So none of those fights would ever happen the way they happen, and that's okay. It's entertainment. It's cool. There is something to be said for muscle memory. At first, Johnny didn't do so great, and he was fighting a couple teenagers, and still getting kind of punched here and there. I was fine with that. Like, I didn't bump into that either at all. I'll tell you what, since we're talking about Daniel, and since you brought up the karate thing, I don't want to be critical too much, because I think there's a lot of great things about this show. I don't want to be critical of the child actors and anything else. I will be critical of this. Ralph Macchio knew well ahead of time he was doing this show. Dude could have trained a little bit. Like, he looks so bad doing the karate fights. Zabka looks decent. He looks decent. He's an older guy. He probably doesn't do it regularly, but he took this choreo seriously. He's stretching out. But man, I just watched Ralph Macchio do stuff, and I'm like, man, you had like at least a year to get ready for this, and you didn't. And it makes me cry on the inside a little bit. It's so sad. So sad.
If it makes you feel any better, it looked better than Iron Fist.
That doesn't make me feel better. Anything looks better than Iron Fist.
That's the muscle memory. Okay. All right. I'll take that from you, Jeff, because that was my biggest issue. Is it's like supposedly Johnny hasn't done anything since the tournament, and he's just able to get to the point where he can even train students like within like, a few weeks or whatever, I'm like, that seems
I
a little
appreciate we
suspicious.
didn't have to training montage the main characters.
Okay.
Like I want to see the training montage for the kids. Like that's cool. I don't want to have to see the old guy trying speaking as an old guy who trains regularly. Like I don't want to see another old guy going through that stuff. Like that's boring screen time. I don't think we needed it,
Okay. All right, fair enough. But yeah, so do you have anything to add about Daniel and how he's been played in the show? I mean, beyond the karate part.
I hate Daniels. Like,
okay.
He's unpleasant, and I think it's the way he's written. I think they lean too hard into he's unpleasant because he's grating and whiny, much like he was as a kid. But they allowed Johnny to grow. I don't think they let Daniel grow as much as they probably could have. I get it for the show. You want to flip the script. So you want Johnny to be the likable one and Daniel to be the foil. But after like 5 seasons now, it's just, oh God, I need something more. Like the less Daniel in the show, the better for me.
No, I think that scene I think it's at the end of season 4 where he's standing over Miyagi's grave and he's basically admitting like, I can't be you. And I think that's like a lot of the issue is like Daniel has wanted to be Mr. Miyagi and sort of believes that he did attain some sort of purity of spirit or whatever and can do no wrong. And through the first few seasons, he's operating under that. It's not, Cobra Kai is evil. It has to be evil because I'm the perfect one. And so he has attained, I think, a little bit of introspection and a little bit of understanding that he's been mistaken. But yeah, like Daniel is, he's difficult to take.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, it's just difficult.
Yeah,
like I came away with it with the impression that the intention was for us not to like Daniel.
I think you're right, and it worked.
I think that's probably I think that's probably right that was intentional. Steven, why don't you give us your thoughts on both Johnny and Daniel as characters?
Yeah, and again, coming in fresh, so I really the first time I've seen in depth either one of them. But again, the basic outlines of them coming into it. So Daniel is the good guy. Johnny is the typical blonde bad guy. And again, I liked that they came in and made Johnny. They took Johnny's point of view from the first of the series and really kind of gave him some sympathy and gave us a chance to understand where he was coming from and what was being done with him. And I think they've really tried to pare away a lot of the white hats and black hats that the audience would come in with and really kind of find the shades of gray and find out where the characters are really more alike than different. And I thought that was a really bold choice and a really good choice because, I think there was some intent to make Daniel unlikable, but not really, I think, so much unlikable, but to put him on Johnny's level in a sense, to give the audience a chance to see him from Johnny's point of view, and to see him as an antagonist. And I thought that worked really, really well. And again, when you're taking these sort of iconic characters to poke those with a stick a little bit and play with where they are in the structure of the story, I thought was a really interesting choice. So I really liked giving Johnny giving us a sense of what was done to him, as coming in as the villain from the films, that we see that he was played as much as Daniel was. He was put on a path as much as anybody else. And the things that we didn't like about him were not always his doing.
Yeah.
And came from a place. And I thought that seemed very real to me too. That gave a lot of dimensions to these characters. I think that's one thing, is that they've really taken sort of 2-dimensional characters and given them a third dimension. And that that's made it really interesting and made the show go on as long as it has. Because I think if they hadn't, it would have been a really boring show.
Yeah, it gives a lot of context to Johnny also, because like you sort of see also the dichotomy of, Daniel's really stuck on the fact that some kids like punched him a few times when he was in high school, whereas Johnny, his dad left, then his stepdad was abusive, and then he fell in with Kreese, who was in some ways positive in that he was trying to teach him something, but was also an abusive parental figure, and taught him a lot of toxic behaviors and things like that. So it's like, you start to like see that like Johnny's been through a lot more and should be cut a lot more slack than Daniel, who is like, oh, some kids picked on me in high school and they punched me a few times, and it's like, okay, dude, but like this person's actually experienced real trauma. And
that does seem very real, doesn't it? When people have been in abusive situations, they tend to not get themselves out and rescue them. They tend to get into other abusive situations. People and abusers seem to hone in on who to take advantage of. That's a very real thing, and I think something that an audience, a certain segment of the audience who may have been through something similar to that, can really identify with.
Well, yeah, and there's also the whole thing of like Johnny, because he didn't have a positive parental figure. Then when he's faced with having his own kid, ends up bailing on his girlfriend and his child and all of that, and like, again, like I really like how this show really gets into like these are like real things that happen with people, and then sort of weaving them into this like slightly larger than life Karate Kid universe, where like Jeff pointed out, it's like everything's solved by brawls in this universe, and there's no cops anywhere, and
yeah, and even with trying to make up for being an absent father, which is a very normal thing for a person to do, and coming in and not necessarily, it would have been very easy to just make him bad at it, but they didn't. They made him not know what to do, which is a slightly different twist and much something more centered. And that's what I think is that when they push these characters into these new situations, they really give them a center to play off of.
Yeah, it does a better job. Like, Jeff compared this to a CW show earlier, and don't take that at face value, Stephen. Jeff did it in a good way, but I mean, he kind of sort of compared it to a CW show. But whereas CW shows are always trying to tell us why we should care, this show, like, I think why it works in a way that the CW shows don't often is that it showed us why we should care, through the performances, without somebody standing up and saying like, you should care because this happened to me, and then just like these sort of impassioned speeches that feel so forced. We don't have any of that. We have very realistic sort of emotional, dynamic kind of thing. Okay, Jeff's just wagging his finger at me.
I don't know. I think maybe you've forgotten the entire Samantha Robbie storyline.
I was going to caveat that a little bit. I think the writing has been really smart.
Yeah,
I think it's been really smart around Daniel and Johnny, and maybe less so around the kids.
Yeah, the triangles that have formed, the romance triangles that have formed, are very CW. Yes, I will agree with that.
It's kind of 90210, but even then, they make some interest. They you can see that they're trying to make some and find some interesting things to go with. Like Tori's character, where they're giving her, they set her up as a villain and then give her some sympathy. But again, not like in a way that they're going to tell us, well, we should really care about. But they really kind of showed us some angles of the character that we hadn't seen, factoring into that, kind of almost mirroring what they did with Johnny in a sense.
Yeah. Well, and it also shows like, again, like all these characters, and I wanted to talk about Kreese anyway, so this is a good segue into that. Like, all these characters have nuance, because Kreese, even though Kreese is like the most toxic of toxic male influences, he steps in, and when he sees what's going on with Tori, and with the fact that she's basically like in a situation where it's like lose your apartment or whore yourself out, and he steps in there and is just like, yeah, no, you're not going to do this, and threatens the guy and everything, and it's just like, and that's why she has such loyalty to him, is that she's seen him come in and do this thing for her that he didn't have to do, but he just saw that it was wrong, and he was like, I'm going to take care of this. And so so even Kreese, who, at that time I'm looking at as like this is the villain, I'm like, okay, Johnny's not the villain. Daniel's not really the villain. Kreese is the villain, and then Kreese ends up doing, some positive things, and it's like, oh, okay, well, we're not going for just like he's just like the evilest of evil, irredeemable type characters, and so that was interesting to me. But it is one of those things that I do worry about them working too hard with the character that was like trying to strangle a kid to death. And again, you didn't see this, Stephen, because you didn't see the movie. But but basically was trying to strangle Johnny to death. Because he lost the tournament. And but at the same time, it's like we're trying to like, also show that there's more sides to his character, and I don't want them to take that too far, though. I don't want Kreese to have like a redemption arc, and he's just as good with Johnny and Daniel as they are with him, and we're all gonna hold hands and whatever. I don't want the show to end that way, and I don't think they're going to. No,
I don't think. I think they're going the Darth Vader Emperor route. They're giving Kreese the Darth Vader treatment. Let's give him just a little bit of sympathy. And then you've got Terry Silver, who's going full on Emperor, zero sympathy to that character. He's the puppet master. And he's, I dig it,
Right. And that's another fascinating character of a guy that tried really hard to restrain his urges and to like go, but he just needs that one little in. It's like an addict, where he's just got to go right back into all those manipulative behaviors and, just trying to like control everything. And, that was another really good take, I thought, because I was wondering what they were going to do with him. And then, they brought him in, and it's like, oh no, this is the true evil.
Yeah.
This is the true evil guy.
Well,
like this is the.
And one of the things that I like about the show, and again, not having seen films, is that they really elevate out of melodrama. It'd be very easy to have like mustache twirling villains, but what they do, and that's why I think they're smarter than to put up some redemption arc, because we don't want to see people really necessarily learn and grow, but we want to show where they came from and what caused this, like when I in acting, when I play a villain character, there's a mind process that no villain ever thinks of themselves as the villain. Mm-hmm. And these characters, Kreese and Terry Silver, they don't think of themselves as the villain. They have come from a place, and what the show has done is given us the context to show us where that came from, so that we can understand. We don't have to be on their side. We don't have to think that they're right, but we see where that villainy came from, and that adds a level of depth and understanding to what they're doing. And I think that's a really good choice.
Absolutely. Like the episode, Kreese's backstory episode, the flashback episode was, I think, masterfully handled, so you immediately think the bully stepping into the diner is Kreese, he kind of looked like him a little bit. And then it's like, oh no, we're not going to, let's peel back that onion a little bit. But it was just enough, not too much,
Right. And it's not like at the end of it, I go, oh, well, I like Kreese now. I still don't like the character. But now I know
him a little bit.
But now I know where that's coming from.
Right.
And that gives the dynamic of the other characters a lot more body and a lot more nuance and a lot more you can play from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and I mean, like the situations he was put through, I mean, would drive anyone crazy. Like that's the kind of stuff that a lot of vets had to face when they came home, and like they had been through such horrific conditions that they didn't, they weren't capable of like integrating back, but again, like that's the thing. It shows like the trauma is trickling down, like Kreese's superior officer like added to it, it's just the situation of Vietnam, but also his superior officer was a horrible person that put all that on him. Now he's putting it on Johnny. Johnny's, starting to become self-aware that he was putting it on the kids that he was training, as well as Miguel and his son and everything else. And so it's kind of like, like they're showing the sort of through line of the characters. And, I like that. I like that dynamic. I like showing all of that and helping us to understand where it's all coming from, instead of just characters just being bad because they, they're misbehaving because they want to misbehave, and stuff that doesn't really set up, adequately like why people are the way they are. So
yeah, and it makes it more interesting that the levels of abuse, and Kreese is definitely an abuser, and the levels of abuse, and even if he's helping out Tori, he's also abusing her at the same time. Mm-hmm. He's abusing Johnny. He's abusing, and that's what abusers do. That's how they get the people to abuse. That's how they get them to stick around. And that seems very real to me, and that seems that adds a lot of credence to the story that they're telling.
Yeah. So Jeff, thoughts on Kreese and Silver?
Kreese is Kreese, but man, I can talk about Silver for a while because
Okay.
Thomas Ian Griffith is another one who understood the assignment.
Yes.
He was the only good part of the third movie. He was fantastic in the third movie. Not only could he, did he have a little bit of martial arts training, could make it look kind of decent and everything else, but man, he just chewed the scenery as a villain, just to the edge of mustache twirling, which I respected. And he's doing it much more refined in the show. I think that there are some standout players in this show, and Silver's one of them. So to me, it's all about Johnny. It's all about Terry Silver, and I hope we get to him at some point. It's all about my boy Hawk. Like, those are the MVPs of the series, because they know the show they're in, and they're playing to it just right, and they never fall outside the lines with their performance. They go high, but they never go over the top, and they never bring it down so low that you're like, man, did you forget what type of show you're in? Like, they're right down the lane, and I just gotta respect that as an actor. Like, it's fantastic.
Eric, what about you? Thoughts on Kreese and Silver?
Silver, I thought he was kind of over the top with the mustache twirling, and like, to the point where I was like, "Come on, really?" I mean, you want to take over the world with karate dojos?
You're gonna put a dojo on every corner,
but you're going to put all of the dojos in the one valley where the guy trying to stop you. I mean, if he had just went one town over, Daniel wouldn't have cared. If he had built dojos in Seattle, he'd already have taken over the world. So I mean, we're talking like Pinky in the brain levels of incompetence at this point.
But it's the valley, Eric. The valley is what's important.
I would challenge that a bit. And again, I didn't see the movie, so I could be wrong. But how I took it, that this is a guy who has the money. He could do this anywhere. He could set these up anywhere. He wanted to get these in Daniel's face. It was getting at Daniel that was important. Right. Not setting up dojos. And so he set that up because he wanted to just stick it to him and just rub his nose in the dirt every chance he could.
Right. And what was his situation in Vietnam? Being completely powerless, having terror at everyone around him. So what does he have to do now? He has to control everything. Right. And so that's why he plays these games of wheels within wheels and tries to control all the variables, which he bit off more than he could chew. Like, he tried to control everything about the scenario, and there were things that he couldn't account for. And so that's why, at the end of the season, he loses basically. But but it was fun to me. It was fun watching the whole thing play out and watching him be one step ahead of Daniel, and try, and guessing all the things that they were going to do. And even like the thing where Chosen just uses the wrong word because he's from Okinawa, but he's playing it off like he's from Kyoto. And so, it's, Kampai is what, I usually hear when, Japanese people toast, and that's what he should have said. But in Okinawa, they say a different word. I can't remember what it was. But just stuff like that, because even I thought that was weird when I heard that, but I don't know Okinawan, so that's why I was kind of like, huh. But then like that becomes the thing where he's like, yeah, no, I know that you're not who you say you are because of that. And I was like, oh, that's really neat that they went to like that kind of like fine, detail sort of thing. And that's like, he's smart enough to pick up on that. And so, yeah, I enjoyed that.
But like, that was my thing on Silver. As for Kreese, like, I could see what they're trying to do with him. I can see the story that they're trying to unfold with him. But Martin Kove is 78 years old. It is ridiculous that he is in the situations that he's in at nearly 80. and that really breaks the immersion for me. I mean, like, he's a good actor. I like almost everything that he's been in, but he is old, and his age and the situation that he's in just isn't meshing with me, and that probably breaks my suspension of disbelief the most.
Okay, but here's the thing. Just because an actor is a certain age doesn't mean their character is. I wouldn't have known that he was 78 just looking at it. I assumed 60s, like, and I assumed he was somewhere in his 60s. I get that that's still fairly old to be doing, like, martial arts, kind of stuff, like, against people half your age.
Well, you figure in the early 80s, he would have been 30.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a Vietnam vet, so I mean, it's kind of
okay. Fair.
But
Yeah.
I'm just saying, based on looks alone, he doesn't look like he's 80 to me.
like by contrast, Pat Morita was I think he was 50 when he did Miyagi in the first movie.
Okay.
50, 51, somewhere in there. And even then, he had the one fight scene, and he didn't like overdo it, but he had like the one fight scene where he took out the Cobra Kai guys, and then he didn't fight for the rest of the series. At least I don't think he got into any other fights.
In the third one, he did for a little bit.
Yeah, even though the show isn't, obviously because Mr. Miyagi isn't in it, physically, it's not about Mr. Miyagi. I do find it interesting that they're kind of like peeling back the onion and like sort of revealing like Miyagi has like his sort of like he's put his own like spin into like the martial arts style, the Miyagi martial arts style, because like the things like Daniel was like, he never taught me this, and it's like Mr. Miyagi's pacifism is not what the Miyagi style is about, like he basically took things out of it to make it like this sort of much more pacifistic sort of style, and I found that kind of interesting because it's this whole thing about like you basically debilitate people is one of the things that they do.
Karate in and of itself is it's not really a defensive style. It's a very powerful style. I don't know, maybe I'm describing that wrong.
No, yeah, one punch, one kill is their motto. Like it's focus everything, all energy into one punch. I think that makes sense.
Like you look at something like Tai Chi, which is all about using your opponent's moves against you and transferring not like chi energy, but like the energy of their movement and using it against your opponent. Right?
That was Aikido.
And like, in karate, you're supposed to break bones. You're supposed to punch through people. Miyagi's take on it is different.
Well, and with all due respect, Mick Jagger is 80. So, an 80-year-old man can accomplish some things. And I think I don't think that I never got the impression that they were trying to tell me that these guys are supposed to be like 40-year-old guys doing this. Like, I think they are at an advanced age, but I also think that there's something in their soul that is driving them so hard to keep themselves into a physical shape to be able to do this for whatever reason. Something is gnawing at them to be able to do the work to do this. Like, I buy this whole thing.
There have been older people who have done exceptional physical things, and just have the, the training or whatever that they've kept up with and whatever. So, I mean, it's not completely outside of the realms of possibility. I mean, there have been bodybuilders and stuff in their 70s that have been able to lift tremendous weights and things. And,
these actors are not in, they're not in superhero suits, and it's not CGI. These guys are in really good shape.
What was that guy's name? Lance Lalang or something?
Oh yeah.
So I'm with you on the age, but I think to me it's adding to the narrative. I don't think it's taking away from it. For me, I think it's adding to what's really fueling this story. This is something that's driven these people for decades, and that's really compelling.
There's a level of suspension of disbelief with this show that I think you just have to embrace. It's the way I look at it. And it's a small level. But again, I go back to the premise of the show is ridiculous. It is not, it's like this slightly adjacent multiversal reality where, kids are fighting all over the place. Cops don't get called. No one cares. No one ever. It's kind of like the John Wick syndrome. Like, oh, I got a black eye for a minute. Miguel's injury miraculously heals. Like it's slightly hyper realistic in terms of stuff. So I get what you're saying. I don't bump up against it, but I can see what you're saying. He really does he hits that age limit where you're like, now it's really starting to feel we're stretching it a bit. But I see what they're trying to do as well. I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence with this one.
Like the big thing that pushed me over the fence was when he was in prison and he just like destroyed that bike.
No, agreed. It was ridiculous. I'll use that word a lot about this show. Ridiculous.
Yeah. But again, if it makes you feel any better, this is technically a DC property.
What?
Yeah, like this movie started as a comic book adaptation of DC's Karate Kid, and then they just changed everything about it. But like,
really
interesting.
Maybe one of the best DC adaptations ever.
Shots fired.
There's your 5-minute controversy.
Yeah.
No, I was on with the suspension of disbelief early on just because I knew that's not how a car dealership works. There's no way that's a car dealership. It is not a functional car dealership. But
you get a
that's
free
fine.
bonsai tree with every sale.
It's television, so sure, you're going to suspend disbelief a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the school-wide brawl.
Yeah.
No teachers, nobody come, like, not even going to try to do anything about this
Only
situation.
Stingray, the only guy
right,
trying to write things
like...
up. A man Stingray, who they did dirty.
Or the only voice of reason in the entire show is Daniel's wife, and even she gets into a fight.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up. Like, I feel that, and I'm curious what you guys think about this. Like, I thought that the first couple seasons really strong. Last couple of seasons, I feel like we're waffling a bit. Some characters are losing their way, and she's one of them. Like, to me, like, she in the first couple seasons was the audience's point of view. Mm-hmm. Like, she would look at them and go, "You guys are ridiculous. Mm-hmm. This is absolute nonsense. What are we doing? We're solving things with karate. This is what we're doing now." Like, she was speaking for us as the audience, and I feel that she got sucked into the drama in the last 2 seasons to where that character doesn't feel that way anymore to me. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I gotta say that, like, to me, some of the best parts were in the early seasons when she and Carmen would just talk about how Daniel and Johnny were isn't that cute that they're having this little spat and whatever, and just like taking it down like 3 notches. But yeah, I agree with you. I think in general, like, they're playing this sort of musical chairs game almost with people's personalities, where it's like, oh, you sit in this chair now, and it is a little problematic. The kids especially are just like swapping points of view and everything, like, and it feels like way too quickly, where it's just like, wait, like, why are you here now? Like, you were just there a few episodes ago. Like, I don't understand why we're doing this. And it feels like, yeah, they are just trying to stretch out. Like, oh, like, we never thought this show would make it to 5 seasons. Like, so we got to just mix things up. And I do think it has been a little bit to the detriment of the show.
Yeah, I think it's not been as good to the side characters as it has to the main character, what I would consider the main characters. And maybe because they don't have that history going into it. But yeah, they've been a little bit of like, oh, let's push them here instead of and maybe because the actor wants to. I don't know what the reason is, but there's something to having the people who are sort of outside of the main tension who give us something that's unexpected, that I find very refreshing. And I thought Daniel's wife really gave us a perspective that I didn't see anywhere else, and I really liked that. And I still think there's some places to go with that without having her, get in, knuckles in and get into a brawl. Like you were talking about the Silver and Chosen thing, the thing that really surprised me, because one thing I didn't expect in a series about karate was a chess match. And that was wonderful. I like when they find ways of doing battles that aren't just karate. Mm-hmm. I like when they put characters against each other in other ways. And that's she's one of the characters they could really have face off against characters in a way that isn't fighting. Yeah, that's where it gets into like the 90210 thing, where the kids, these two kids were best friends, and now they're mortal enemies, and then they're friends again, and it's within a span of a few episodes, and sometimes that's a little immediate,
Well, yeah, and I also appreciated that she like tried to understand Tori and tried to, like Tori's already, messed up, and she's already like sees Kreese as like, her savior. And so like she has this like extreme loyalty to him, and so her efforts don't really pay off very well. But I appreciated the fact that, again, like she's the one that's standing outside of this and is looking in and is like, this girl seems really troubled, like maybe I should try to help, like maybe I should try to figure out what's going on. And so I appreciate the things also that happen outside of the fighting, although I gotta say I do like watching the fight.
Sure, but they have the characters who do the fights as well.
Right.
You don't have to have every character in a karate battle.
Right. Exactly.
Although I do get the implication that all of the characters know that they're in a series called Karate Kid, and that they are contractually obligated to provide a certain number of karate fights.
Yeah. I was surprised that the water park didn't turn into a karate brawl. Like I thought for sure that's where we were going with that one.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so let's talk about the kids.
Here we go.
All right. All right. So Jeff, like again, I don't think we have the time to like go through each one like individually. But just give your sort of like high level, like what do you think about the kids? Any standouts, either good or bad, and like what you think about them in general?
I think they're all great, and I'm saying this because I think for the most part they're all really doing well with the material they're given. So I'm saying this because a lot of them are kid actors or started as kid actors, even though some of them are kind of grown into their early 20s now and everything else. And I don't want to be too harsh on anyone's performances. I think from a standout perspective, absolutely Jacob Bertrand as Hawk is, out of all the kids, not only is his story to me the most compelling, I think he pulls off the fight choreo the best. He really, like the other ones, knows the assignment. Like he realizes he's in this hyper realistic, reality sort of thing, and he just plays to it so well. I think he's by far my favorite kid.
The sound effect, the Hawk sound effect they play every
so
time
good.
he shows
It's so good.
It just makes
It's
me
ridiculous. When he takes off that jacket and that giant ridiculous tattoo and the mohawk and him just strutting through the halls, clotheslining people, like it's fantastic. I think that I think some of them are kind of one note. And again, it's the writing. Like Dimitri, very one note. Like the nerdy kid, I get it. Oh, he's a little bit of a hypochondriac. We've gone into 5 seasons now. Enough of that. Like it's tiresome. I think I don't know how to say his name correctly, but the guy who plays Miguel, I think is fantastic. He's charismatic, he's charming, a great actor, pulls off the choreo really well. Not a fan of Robbie or Samantha LaRusso. Like I can't stand them, and I don't know if it's the writing. I think they both can pull off the choreo okay, kind of like Tori can pull off the choreo okay. They look decent. They're believable-ish in this universe, but not my favorite characters. They get the love triangle just. Now, granted, that's probably because I'm not the target. Right. I'm the nostalgia and the older guys. That's they're throwing those at me, and I'm sure younger people probably really vibe with Robbie pouting duck face at the camera for 15 minutes an episode. Like I'm sure they love it. I don't. I think it's ridiculous. But yeah, I think across the board, I think they do well with what they're given. I think the writers could do a little bit better with some of the kids, though. I think they leave them hanging and they don't let them shine the way they could.
Yeah, it's almost like, though, also that they feel like they each need to spend an equal amount of time, like in each group. And it's like, I feel, well, I mean, I get teenagers, And I get the fact that teenagers do tend to waffle and sort of like be sort of volatile and whatnot.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, it's kind of like, because so early on, I thought, oh, I see where this is going. Miguel is going to end up going towards Daniel, the Miguel, the kid that, Johnny, feels like is his son, even though Robbie is his actual son, is going to end up choosing Daniel over him. But Sam is going to choose Johnny over Daniel. And that's going to be part of this dynamic of, how dare you take my child and like train them in your way, which is mistaken kind of thing. And they never quite went there. They sort of flirted with it a few times. And, like we do see that Sam like, looks to Johnny and has some respect for Johnny that Daniel doesn't have. And she understands like that Johnny is trying to push them in a way that, like don't be a doormat, whereas like Daniel's trying very much again to embody what he thinks Mr. Miyagi would do. And I'm not sure that Daniel ever quite gets what Mr. Miyagi would actually do in any particular situation, but at least that's what Daniel's going for. But he, like I say, he's almost like canonized certain ideas that he feels are Miyagi ideas. And these are the holy, right, the holy thoughts of Miyagi. And we saw Miguel for a while like looking at Daniel as sort of like, oh, like, Mr. LaRusso, like I would like to be more like you and all that kind of stuff. But they never quite went there. But instead we seem to see these kids now drifting among all the groups and everything. And I feel like I at least want a few of them to be like very much. Tori was one of the few that was very much like she's a Cobra Kai kid, and I appreciated that she at least was like sort of sticking, I'm a Cobra Kai kid. Like this is my mentality and this is my thing. And it seems like everyone else is pretty fluid. I do miss Aisha from the first two seasons.
Yeah.
I loved when she just jumped right into the strike first, no mercy and all of that. And I like the fact that she was like a non-traditional sort of like, you've met like Jeff's mentioned, like these are all very much traditional, like young, pretty, people. And Aisha was a little overweight, like wasn't sort of typical standards of what's like, a pretty person. But I love the fact that she just dove right into the Cobra Kai thing. And I loved her attitude. And so I do kind of miss her in this.
She was fun. She just couldn't the choreo. Like there's a couple people in there where it's like they just can't make it look even close to being like it just. I don't know. That's where my suspension of disbelief breaks. Like Eric was saying earlier, is when like it's just clear like she just couldn't make anything look close to being good. Like I liked her character, and there's a couple, I forget some of the other characters too. The big football player guys, they're the same. I feel the same way about them. I'm like, just the fight scenes, they just can't carry them for me. I don't know.
Okay, no, it's fair. Yeah. It's fair. Yeah. And Hawk is one that it's like, I like Hawk, and I liked what they were doing with Hawk, but again, it just seems like on a dime he just decides, what, I'm not going to be Cobra Kai anymore, and I'm just like. Okay, but we went from really deep into, I don't care who I hurt, this is who I'm going to be because this is how I stop people picking on me. And I get there was the whole like breaking Dimitri's arm thing, but I feel like from where they had taken Hawk, that wasn't enough to snap him right back into, I am totally 100% with Miyagi-Do now. And that just seemed kind of abrupt to me. And that's, again, a writing problem. It's not a problem with the actor, but I wish the musical chairs would stop.
Yeah, Jeff, I get you with the choreo, and I think that's one of the limitations of it being on television is, it's not just the actor getting the choreo right, but there's a way to shoot it in a way that doesn't expose that the actor isn't as
Yeah.
But television is doesn't have the money. It's faster paced when you shoot it. You just in a feature film, you could probably make those things look a lot better with those actors than you can in television.
I will say this though, this is a Netflix show and they get a lot more time.
They do
up front. They don't shoot it like traditional TV.
I'm not saying I don't know, and I don't know what their budget is, and I don't know what their format is, or how their system of working is. But it's not the first time that Netflix has fallen short on filming fight choreography well. I think you guys
our next Iron Fist comment for the evening reference.
But and I think as far as the actors, like I do agree. The actors are all really solid actors. Like I watch these performances and I really am impressed with them. and two of the actors who I think really stand out actors, Jacob Bertrand, he and Peyton List as Tori, because I believe all of their moments. I don't always like the writing, but I believe them in everything that they're given, and they to me really elevate what they're doing with the characters. But the writing does, if I had a knock on the show, the writing does fail them, and I think part of where that comes from is it seems like the writing for the kids, and maybe to Daniel's wife in as well, the writing seems to be to put these characters in a place to see what effect they're going to have on Daniel and Johnny, and not to let the characters tell a story in and of themselves. And that's kind of a disservice to some of these characters, because some of these characters are really interesting. Aisha would be a great character. I'd love to see more of that, because that character is interesting to me. So find a way to tell that story without, without exposing that she doesn't have the choreography, and that's more of just, I think, really focusing on, it's almost, we come in because it's Karate Kid. We want to see Daniel. We want to see Johnny. We want to see, the characters from the films come back.
They're also executive producers, so I think there's sort of a vested interest in making them
sure. But I get that the side characters are side characters, but there's some interesting stories to tell in there, and if they can find some moments to let the character write for the characters as this character, irrespective of what their effect is on the main arc, you might find some interesting stories, and you might find some really good stuff, and you'll get some really good performances out of these actors, because these actors are really good.
Eric, what are your thoughts on the kids?
Well, for the most part, I like them. I mean, they're interesting characters, but I think the biggest downside is that the show doesn't know if they want the kids to be the main characters or if they want them to be like ancillary characters. Like, in this new Karate Kid, are we following the journey of the kids, or are we following the journey of the now mentors mentoring the kids? It's like, pick a lane and stick with it. Don't keep waffling back and forth. But as for the kids, like, I did like the Dimitri character. Like the whole nerdy, I have no confidence, whatever, karate gave me a boost, and now I don't completely suck all the time.
Well, I also like that he didn't just like join Miyagi-Do and instantly like he was still sucking for a long time after joining Miyagi-Do. And Daniel had to really work with him to figure out something that would even get him to a point where he could like block something. Not even like hit or do anything, it's just to block something, because he's like, he knew that blocking would be the first thing to teach Dimitri because of how timid he is. But I like the fact that they were at least a little realistic. I mean, nothing in the show is realistic, I get that, but I mean a little like not like, oh, he instantly just becomes a karate champ because he spends a day at Miyagi-Do. So yeah, I appreciated
he's more
the
grounded.
effort.
Yeah.
And like, echoing comments said before, Tori's an interesting character. I'm interested to see what they're going to do with her. I'm not invested into Samantha. I don't care who she wants to date. I don't care about her problems. Like, not to be cruel or whatever. It's just like, that's not a storyline that I'm interested in.
Anytime like a show does two intersecting love triangles, it's like, God, why? One love triangle is tedious enough itself, but now this is two intersecting ones
because of the CW.
Right.
or one of the characters that I really kind of like on the Cobra Kai side was Kenny Payne. Like the nerdy kid, who was into the video games, but then he got into karate. Now he's like super aggressive. Like, I'm interested to see what happens with him. Like, is he going to turn that around? Is he going to run with it? But the biggest problem with all the kids that I have, and it's not even an actual problem, but Robbie's character, Tanner Buchanan, I cannot look at him without seeing Sean from Boy Meets World, and it pisses me off. Like, I know it's not him.
Now that you've said it, son of a... No.
I keep saying that he's the love child of Mark Paul Gosselaar and Jonathan Taylor Thomas.
but like, every time he's on the screen, I'm like, Sean, get off the screen.
He looks like he's a genetically created, like somebody was like, I want the 90s, like, like the 90s popular boy. And it's like somebody went into a lab and was like, here is like the 90s, like, popular boy, like figure with the hair and everything. It's just like, oh my God, he's so 90s. It hurts.
But yeah, like Eli Hawk, I forget his name, Jacob something, but like I don't like how his character pulled a 180 on the alignment chart in the middle of an episode. But his journey has been pretty interesting because, like he went from an absolute nobody to super aggressive to super passive, and now he's like the champion.
Well, what I find interesting about it is like they're showing the different effects that this sort of toxic masculinity can have on people. And for some of them, it actually gives them a positive boost, which is why people like carry on those behaviors, is because like for Hawk, for a while, like everything went his way when he did that. Like people were showing him respect and deference. He got a pretty girlfriend, like all this stuff. And so it's like they don't show it like all as just like, oh, like everybody just like hates you once you become this way. Some people are like that. Some people can't pull it off. But like Hawk could pull it off. And it was interesting again that they showed that, and that adds into the mix of the characters. And like you mentioned, the little kid that Robbie was training. There's another one that just like went straight into it, and again, I like that they're showing like all these different effects that it can have, like, and for some people, it becomes a positive for them, even though they're hurting other people, and so there's so many different like directions that things are going in, that it is interesting.
Yeah. And Zolo, the kid who plays Miguel, like I don't like him as a character in and of himself, but I like his interaction with Johnny. Like he was the influence that kind of made Johnny see where he was going and what he was doing, and like I liked that. I did not care at all about his journey to Mexico to find his dad.
Oh, that was the dumbest story.
That was
that was a shark jump moment for a moment. Like that was rough.
Yeah, that was not good. And it was like with his character, I keep thinking, is it wrong that I like his mom and grandma much more than I like him?
Okay, we got to talk about the montages, the dream montages that they've done in this show. Like, the first one was like Johnny's dream, and it's like, like all the different like 80s, like there's like commercial, like it's like the Pepsi commercial, and then there's like the Top Gun moment, and there's like all this different stuff with like merging together with him and her getting together. And then there's the other dream that happens like a season or two later, and you're like, Johnny's having another dream, but then it's like he's pushing baby carts and stuff, and then you realize it's her dream. It's just so funny. It's riding up like Maverick and Top Gun, but then he's got like the baby cart and stuff. It's just like...
Love that.
I love the 80s nostalgia of this show so much.
Oh yeah.
That's when the show is firing on all cylinders, when they're really aware of what they're doing and what kind of show they're making, and they're really having fun with it. And that's just a joy to watch.
I think what Eric was saying though, like about Miguel, to me, like the Miguel character is them getting another bite at the apple with Daniel. It's like, how, the 80s movie was very one note. It was black and white. There was no shades of gray. This show is all shades of gray. And I feel like they're getting a shot with the Miguel character to kind of get a do-over with Daniel. And I'm kind of here for it. Yeah, the Mexico thing was dumb. There have been a couple small storylines where they started to veer, and I'm like, oh, please, let's not do this. And luckily that ended quickly enough. And we're back to,
I think they just wanted to force Robbie and Johnny together in a car for a while. I think the whole purpose of that
100%. It was road trip. It was, how can we make the road trip happen? And they had been hinting at this dad thing, for a while. So let's build it up and see what happens. And then, it was the fake out. Like it was a nothing burger, so wah, that type of writing is fine. But with Miguel, I see him as Daniel 2.0, and I kind of like it, even though he is kind of irritating sometimes with the
When
love
I came
triangle
into
stuff.
this, I kept thinking, one of these kids is going to be like the next Daniel, and who are they going to make him? It's like, at first originally I thought it was going to be Samantha. That seems obvious, right? So they're going to set her up to be the next Daniel, and then they start with the love triangle stuff. And I'm like, nope, they're not going there. And I think it would be easy to have a next Daniel, and I'm kind of hoping and kind of glad that they haven't really leaned hard into that, and I'm kind of hoping they don't, because it just seems like a very easy thing to go to. Like
Yeah.
I'd really like to see I'd like to see them define these kids' character and see where these characters go off on their own path instead of forcing them into a next Daniel.
Well, I am glad that we finally gotten beyond the whole Cobra Kai Eagle Fang. Also hilarious that Johnny's just got to put two tough sounding things together. Yeah. Eagle Fang. It doesn't make any sense. I love that. Miyagi, like it's like there's got to be these stratifications, and the kids are like, I'll take a little from column A and a little from column B, and I don't have to take your philosophy, which is how new martial arts were created organically in the real world anyway, as people like developed one style into a different style and all that kind of stuff. So it's like that we kind of gone beyond this whole thing of like there are these lines and whatnot. So yes, I'm hoping to see in the final season, because we know the next season is the final season, I'm hoping to see like the kids develop like their sort of some of their own unique ways of approaching things and take sort of their own philosophy to sort of grow up and not just be like, well, I'm team Johnny, I'm team Daniel, I'm team Kreese or whatever, like to go beyond that.
Yeah, I agree. And I do like the breaking down the team barriers, like, and I love the montages of the training, it's, like, obviously, Johnny is like going to be a little rougher on his training, and Daniel's going to be very much by the book or whatever. And
turn the cement mixer.
And it'd be very easy to show, one is the right path and one is the wrong path. And sure, jumping off of a rooftop onto mattresses may not be the right path, but you can see that there is some benefit to what Johnny is bringing to his approach and what Daniel's bringing to his approach. And you can see there's some detriment to each as well. And I like that's a real strength of the show.
Right. Yeah. Run away from these dogs I'm unleashing on you.
So good.
Some of that was hysterical.
For that scene where Johnny and Daniel had to learn each other's styles. So like Johnny got Daniel into a fight with a hockey team.
Yes.
Miraculously wins.
I love it. Oh, and I love the one where like they broke Cobra Kai into two teams, and then Stingray ends up being the winner because everybody ignored him and didn't pay attention to him, and then he just shows up right at the end when the.
Can we talk about Stingray? Can we take a second to appreciate the glory that is Stingray? I feel like they just kind of forgot about him. Like I don't know what happened. Like he's kind of pivotal to the plot, because I thought that that turn. That Terry Silver turn when that whole thing comes around, that was chef's kiss. And but I feel like they just kind of dropped him out of the rotation. And to me, he's a really entertaining character. Am I the only one? Like, am I the only one who loves Stingray? Because I want more Stingray.
I found him a little annoying.
Really? Okay, that's fair. Okay.
I will say I did like the thing where, because just everybody ignored him, he ended up being the winner. I just thought I was like, that's the kind of thing that would happen. Like everybody just underestimates him, and he's just like, all right. But,
I liked the character until his betrayal moment, and then I was like, okay, I'm done with you. But like, I also get the feeling that like the character, not the actor, like the character is like 30 something. And he wants to fit in with the cool kids that are in
so creepy. I love it.
High school, junior high. I don't know how old these kids are, but yeah, up until that betrayal moment where he was just like, "You have no spine at all." It was just like, okay, well, what's this character? Like, I like this character, and then he showed his true colors.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that too, and but I did like that they could have made a very creepy character out of him and didn't. That was really interesting. It's like, the one thing the show does well is it sets you on a path where you think you know what's going to happen, and then it tangents.
Mhm.
And they did that really well with his character up until the betrayal, and then that wasn't as
I do wonder though if him disappearing had something to do with COVID, because
possible.
yeah, like he's gone in the third season, which would have been the first season affected by COVID. Then he's a little bit in the fourth season, and then he's a little more in the fifth season. So I don't know if he was stuck somewhere and couldn't make, I don't know if that was a deliberate thing, or if that was they didn't want him for some reason thing, but or if it was just like, oh, circumstances, we have to write the character out because he can't be with us right
That's
now
fair.
because of lockdown, whatever. So
And I know, and I saw him on a couple other shows as well. So maybe he was, filming, whatever, conflicts and whatnot. But yeah, to me, that's just one of the characters I feel they just forgot about him.
Yeah, and I think there was a gap in seasons, and probably COVID and some other things, that there was a gap in. You can tell because by Daniel's son, is 3 foot tall, and then the next season he's 6. So 6 feet
I
tall.
love Johnny's comment. Johnny's like, "Did you switch to Whopper Juniors?" When he sees the kid, because he was a little stockier, when he's younger, and then suddenly like this tall, sort of thin, and he's like, "Did you switch to Whopper Juniors?" And I just lost it.
Grew a little, and that's what happens. And it's a good reminder too that these are kids and they're going to grow.
Yeah, so let's talk about season 6 a little bit. We know there's some international tournament they're going to be involved with. That's the that's going to be the kicker for the season. Like, do you feel like that's like the best way for this show? Like, do you feel like they should double down on the whole tournament thing, or do you feel like that's kind of a mistake, like heading into it, to just hold it all to like, oh, like we're gonna have some winner, from this, and they're gonna be the special celebrity kid now. So I'm curious what people think about that. Eric, what do you think about the idea of the 6th season being around this international tournament?
Well, I mean, the first movie centered around a tournament. The third movie centered around the tournament. Like what is Karate Kid unless it's revolving around a tournament? I mean, honestly, I would kind of like it to go to where everybody shows up and then they just get dominated on an international platform, and then they realize that maybe karate isn't everything.
Well, maybe being the Valley karate champ doesn't mean that you're able to go against the best in the world.
Right. Maybe the Valley isn't the pinnacle of karate in the world.
And I like Jeff's facial expressions here because I know he has gone to some international tournaments. So
like they show up, and then like the person who ends up winning, like they introduce him, like, oh yeah, like this guy's actually gone through Kumite or whatever, and everybody's like, what? Or oh yeah, we're Miyagi-Do, and everybody's like, who? Go away. And then they all just get wiped in the first round, and they go home, and they realize that their life doesn't revolve around karate, and that can be the lesson of the whole show, that karate's not everything.
Okay. All right, Stephen, what do you think about the idea of the tournament being the end of the series?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Eric that these are mandated story beats, if you will, probably from the films, and so they know they have to sort of follow that, and that's why you see all of these tournaments. And of course, you always have to get the next tournament has to be even bigger, and so you always have to top yourself, which is why we're getting to the big international tournament. And as an audience member, and especially one who hadn't seen the films, I don't much care about the tournament. I do care about what the characters are going to go through to get there. And I feel like going into the last season, they're going to try and come up with some satisfying ending. And I really hope that they come up with an interesting way to do that, because to me that just seems very trite and packaged, nice little bow on it, and very satisfactory to most of the audience. But I've seen a bunch of that. I'd almost rather see it end somewhat badly or not end at all. Just, life continues after this. which I don't think they'll do. So I'm not. I've got some trepidation going into a last season, but at least the acting will be good.
Okay. Jeff?
I kind of agree with Steven. Like, that there is a world where they can defy expectations. They came into the show and flipped the script.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone thought they knew what they were going to get, and they never got it. Then towards the middle, I think, the success is here. We got to give the fans what they want. I'm praying that they go back to the courage of season 1 and end on a fresh note, if you will. I think the concept of a international tournament is just as ridiculous as the All Valley tournament. Whatever. I don't care about the tournament either. We've got enough tournaments in the series already to establish the kids and give them their time to shine and everything. I want something different from this last season. I thought that in season 5, I thought the weakest part of the story was that whole the Koreans coming over and teaching Tong Soo-do. I thought that was just way over the top and too cheese. It didn't play well to me, and that we're carrying that into season 6. I'm worried. I'm worried that I'm gonna end up disappointed because the show started off so well. Can they still pull it off? I have faith in the writers. They can if they want to. I just don't know if they want to.
Yeah, I do have to say that I started looking askance at things when it was like, oh, only one of these guys can take on all of us, and then it turned to in the end, Johnny and Chosen are taking on 5 of those Korean guys. So we're supposedly oh, they're so good that one of them can take on all of us, and I'm just wait, so what changed? How are you guys suddenly good enough to take on multiples of these guys like it's any karate show or whatever? But all right, whatever. You want the good guys to win at the end, I guess, and so suddenly they're better. I don't know. Yeah, I'm hoping at the very least. See, here's the thing. Now that I've been promised a tournament, I want to see a tournament. I'm not don't end it before they get to the tournament or whatever, before it starts. But I don't want it to be the last episode. I want there to be some episodes beyond the tournament, because I don't want it to end with, we've crowned the international champion, yay. And then it's that to me would feel what did we gain from any?
And it's Dimitri. Dimitri's the international champion.
Yeah.
I see. The very last fight has to be between Hawk and Danny Rand, the immortal Iron Fist, protector of Kong Long, sworn enemy of the fan.
I'm putting my money down. I know where I'm going.
but see, the thing is, anime has ruined me for these things anyway, because I've seen the most ridiculous, off the wall, over the top karate battles in the universe. And it's sort of they're never going to show me anything in live action that's crazier than that. So I don't know. I appreciate the idea of it, but I don't. This will be our 3rd tournament for this show, right? And if it was a movie, I would think, okay, maybe they can pull off some spectacular stuff in this movie, but it's not a movie. It's a show, and so I don't know what we're going to gain from this 3rd tournament.
Well, you know exactly what's going to happen. It's going to come down to Tori and Samantha, and then
Robbie and Miguel.
Yeah. Like that.
They can't in an international tournament have those 4 all be the top. They can't. It has to be only one of their kids that actually gets to a high level. Otherwise it'll feel way too ridiculous.
You're
even
thinking logically, we have to
know. but it's gonna be Miguel. Okay, I'm telling you all, whether Miguel actually wins the international tournament or is just the best of them, of the kids, it's gonna be Miguel, because Miguel is he's the most well-rounded, and he's the one that's mixed the styles, and he sees both of them as mentors and blah blah blah. So it's gonna be Miguel. Okay, I'll save you the trip on that.
Unless the actor's too busy with Blue Beetle 2.
Okay, he's not going to be too busy with Blue Beetle. Okay, I've seen the box office numbers. But anyway, I like the movie, by the way. Anyone listening to this, I'm not dissing the movie, but it's just not getting the people in the seats that it should. But yeah, no. So whatever the through line is, it has to be something beyond Miguel being the best of the kids, because that's what's going to happen. So I'm just hoping that that's not, oh, Miguel is crowned international champion and he ends up opening a dojo on every corner in the valley. Or
you don't think they'll end on like a Rocky 2 moment with the two fists flying and then they just cut right there and you never get to see what happens? You're like, oh no.
I just thought of something.
What?
You know, it would be a great ending.
What?
All of the kids realizing that this is ridiculous. They give up and leave. And then all of the old people are like, okay, well, let's get in the ring and fight. And then it's Danny and Johnny and Silver and whoever else. And it's just the old.
The thing I'm most curious about is how is Kreese going to factor into it, because he broke out, of prison at the end of and I like that too. That was actually cleverly written too. The whole thing where you think Kreese is just like finally given up, but he's just like playing like the therapist and everything, and like, yeah. I liked that. And I like that ending for Kreese to like break out. But so he's going to somehow it's like, what in the world is Kreese going to do, since he has no dojo and he's not like he's going to sign up for like he can't get into the tournament. So it's like, what in the world is Kreese? How is he going to factor into this?
Eating a hot dog in the stands, watching it. That's it. International fugitive, just watching from the sidelines.
Well, that's what I kept thinking, is like, is he gonna open his new dojo or what? He's an escaped convict. What's he gonna do?
He'll just show up behind people while they're like just doing ordinary things and just like say something like to them that's like intimidating or creepy, and then he'll just go, and then it's just.
It's TV. Maybe there's no police in these cities, but still,
there's no police. There's no cops. He's fine. He's fine.
Either that or Daniel and crew are going to get back from the tournament having been victorious to find that Kreese has taken over the valley with like 6 new dojos, and it sets up season 7.
I just love that Silver's plan was like a dojo on every corner and they're all Cobra Kai. I'm like, wait a minute, you're in competition with yourself at that point, like, because you can't support having that many dojos anyway. So like, what is the point?
And this year's this year's tournament champion is Steve from Cobra Kai Dojo 6391.
But yeah, I mean, but here's the thing: as much as we laugh and as much as we mock, I'm here for season. Like, as soon as season 6 drops, like, I'm gonna want to watch it
for sure.
So I like to say, I hope I don't want to be teased by a tournament. I want to see the tournament. I just want them to do something interesting with it.
Yeah, I don't want to feel like we watched all of these seasons just to end on who won some big tournament. It's got to mean something more than that.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's what they're going to give me, I'll be disappointed. But yeah, I'm going to watch every episode. Absolutely.
And maybe they decide that, they don't need to find their soulmate when they're like 17 years old, and they like throw the love triangles away and are just like, you know what, I'm gonna maybe study something for school or whatever and worry about like who I'm gonna marry, after that. I know they're not going to do that. But,
no,
that would
wouldn't it be great on TV just to have some teenage romance thing just go where the characters just go, hey, maybe it's the hormones talking.
Do you have any idea how much of a boost putting the All Valley Karate Champ is on your resume?
I do have some idea. I'm thinking that a lot, but yeah,
in the Valley, it means a lot.
That's right. Instantly get any job, no matter what, like, other like references or training you've had. As the
apparently it's your inroad to open a line of car dealerships. That's all I know.
Yeah, they do at one point explain how Daniel became the car mogul, but I can't for the life of me remember what the explanation was.
It didn't really matter. It was,
although I do
the
like
car
the
mogul
fact
thing was funny.
I do like the fact they constantly mock his Miyagi's little trees business or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, that comes up several times, and it's just like, yeah,
and his cheesy commercials. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, I just love how all the marketing for the car dealership is around the Karate Kid movies. Like, that just cracked me up.
Yeah.
They haven't brought in Hilary Swank's character yet from her movie.
Yeah.
So she's got to make an appearance in season 6.
Well, they keep teasing that.
Yeah,
but
I was gonna say that they've said that if she wants to, they would at least put her in a cameo, and I'd be fine with a cameo. I think that would be a nice little nod.
Cameo.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, just like they did with like the girl who ended up not being a love interest in the third movie. She came in for an episode, had a couple scenes, and that's how we find out that Daniel met his wife, because she was the cousin. His wife is the cousin of that girl from the third movie.
yeah.
And it's like, okay, that's fine. Like, and so if Hilary Swank comes in, like something Miyagi related, because she trained under Mr. Miyagi too, and she just comes and she has a couple conversations with Daniel, that's fine. But yeah, I don't want her to have a major role in the sixth season.
I don't know if they could even get the actress, to be honest, for a major role. I don't know what she's doing right now, but she's an Oscar winning actress, so she's going to be a get. So and it's going to cost some money. So yeah, but I think for a cameo,
but Netflix has been able to get some pretty big names into their shows.
They can.
Not right now. They're not getting anybody.
Not putting it off.
Yes, but nobody's getting anybody right now.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
The production is shut down. They're not even finishing the scripts for season 6 yet. So,
on the plus side, everybody's wide open. On the other hand, you can't book anybody.
Right. Does anybody have anything else that they absolutely have to talk about with this show?
I was told that if I can't say anything nice, not to say anything at all.
On this show? Never. Okay, Steven, is there anything you wanted to mention?
The thing is, like, as the person who came into the show not watching the films, the thing that astounded me was how much I could really embrace what was going on with the show and not feel like I'm lost, not feel like I have to watch 3, 4, 5 films to know what's going on. I'm really impressed with how much they show you exactly what you need to know. And they do put in a bunch of Easter eggs, which I've been able to figure out because there's this thing called the internet, which will tell you all this stuff. So, but I'm really impressed with their first of all, their love of the source material, but also their willingness to play with it. But also the fact that they are making this for an audience that is not just an audience who saw the Karate Kid movies, but for an audience of Netflix viewers, whether or not you've seen the movie, come watch the show. And they've opened that up for us. So I appreciate that.
I would really love to see a demographic breakdown for this show, because I keep watching it going like, this show is made for me and people of my generation. Like, who else is, but obviously the show's been renewed multiple seasons with Netflix. That's a big deal with Netflix that wants to cancel everything, after a season. So, there must be a fairly broad range of people like watching this show. And I would be very curious, like what the breakdown is on that. But yeah, Jeff, anything you wanted to bring up that we haven't talked about?
No, I hope we see more things like this show in the future. I don't mean the nostalgia, bombs and everything else. Like, that's fun and everything, but shows that don't shy away from recognizing that the source material was flawed and embracing it regardless. Shows that, are smart enough to recognize that the audience doesn't have to be spoon-fed everything, that there can be shades of gray. Not everything needs to be ultra black and white. And I think we're seeing more and more shows like that over the past 5-6 years. And I just hope we get more stuff in the same vein, where they're clearly enjoying themselves. They don't take themselves too seriously, but yet they, are telling compelling, complex stories in an entertaining way, and not doing like what you said earlier in the show, Nathan, like telling me why I need to care, just letting it unfold and letting me care if I want to care or not if I don't, and trusting that I as a viewer can kind of pick out the important details where I need to. I just want more shows like that in my life. So yeah,
and just teeing up off of that, like there's been sort of like a movement in a lot of media of anything that's like a continuation of an old property to do a thing where it's like all the people you used to follow, like they were all horrible and stupid and lame, and like here's the new generation and they're amazing, badass, the purest of the pure, greatest of the great, most powerful of the powerful. And every once in a while that's okay, because it's like, oh, we're like turning something on its head, and like we want to do that. But like, it seems like it's happening a lot lately. And I really like this show because it doesn't how do I put this? It's not, so the other side of that, of course, would be to have like, oh, like the old generation, they are the perfect of the perfect, and these young kids aren't like all that great, and you have to call upon the older generation to bail everybody out. This show does this sort of nuanced way of saying like, hey, you know what? The older generation was messed up, and they had their own flaws and their own issues, but they also had some really great, things going for them too. So we're not like completely throwing away any attachments that you had to these characters. There's no fall from grace, in like a big sense of like, oh, well, like this person's just worthless now that was great before. It's just sort of taking it forward and saying like, where's an extrapolation of this person's life now? And I appreciate that a lot. And I really appreciate that sort of look at generations. Rather than going either like the full heroic or like the full like, oh, like the older generation like was all, they are no good. And so I would like to see stuff like that also, like taking that idea also in putting it in other things as a mix. Because again, I don't want anything to be like we're doing this with every property. I like having a lot of different flavors of things. And so I'm just glad that this is sort of bucking the recent trend. And so it's not, so even though we say Daniel's the villain in this, there's a lot of good qualities to Daniel too that have come out as the series has gone on and everything. So it's not like Daniel is just like an awful, person and we should ignore Daniel. But anyway. All right. Well, guys, this has been a lot of fun. Really enjoyed talking about this show. And I'm really glad that everybody on the internet talking about Cobra Kai got me to go back and watch the Karate Kid movies, because that was also like a really great journey experiencing those, and especially the first one. I mean, the first one I think is a phenomenal film. I have issues with the second one too. I know a lot of people say the first two are the great ones. I have some issues with the second one and the third one, but I didn't hate any of those three. I kind of hate the Hilary Swank one, but it had Michael Ironside, so you got something going for it there. But anyway, but all right, let's say our goodbyes and let people know where they can find us. So let's start with you, Eric.
Well, I am actually not anywhere on the internet.
Okay. Well, you can at least say goodbye.
Well, thanks for listening, everybody. See you next time.
All right. Jeff, say your goodbyes, let people know where they can find you.
I am on the internet, so all over the internet actually. You can find me on Twitter, Blue Sky, the Dice Camp instance of Mastodon, at the Mighty Jerd. You can find me there talking about fitness, geekery, role-playing games, martial arts, filmmaking, acting, all the stuff that you guys talk about here on this show. That's what I talk about online. So feel free to reach out. If you want to talk Cobra Kai, I'm there.
So out of curiosity, is Geek Fitness Matters ever going to come back?
That's a sore subject. I can't say that it will, because my co-host has had life things and is doing his walkabout around the world like Kane and Kung Fu and all that jazz. Maybe he will come back at some point in time, but I'm not going to talk into a microphone by myself solo. I need my trusted compatriot, and he is not available. So maybe one day.
I was not aware of that. I just knew that there were no more episodes coming up on my feed. So, all right. It's all right. Sorry to bring up a sore subject, Jeff. All right, Steven.
And thank you, Nathan, for the recommendation of those films. I'll have to add those to my list. The Karate Kid movies.
I'm pretty sure you can watch them on Netflix.
Probably. I will add those. I will watch those one day. I've sworn I will. But you can find me on Facebook at Stephen Pickering Performances. You can find me on Instagram at Mallets Before Thought. You can find me in October, depending on the air date of this. I either will perform or have performed in Puffs in Woodstock, Illinois, at the historic Woodstock Opera House. And in December, I believe in St. Charles, I will be in a holiday program called Seasonal Gifts. So those are the next two things I have lined up stage-wise. Film, something will hit at some point, and I will let everyone know.
Great, excellent. Eric, Jeff, and Steven, thank you so much for being on the show this week.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for having us. It was fun.
No problems.
Well, that's it for Cobra Kai for now. We'll definitely do an episode on season 6 once that's completed. I'm not even sure that Netflix has said when the final 5 episodes are going to air. I know that the second group of 5 episodes is going to air in November, but I guess we'll see, and we will get an episode out when we can for that. But we also want feedback from you. What do you like about the show? What don't you like about the show? What kind of topics do you want to see? Do you like us when we do just dedicated shows to TV shows and movies? Would you like more general geeky topics? Would you like us to cover either a certain genre or a certain medium that we don't cover as much or haven't covered at all yet? You can let us know in a bunch of different ways. One way is to email us at everything@42cast.com. Another way is to go to our website, 42cast.com, and leave us a comment anywhere there. You can go to our Facebook, facebook.com/42cast. You can also go on either X or Instagram @42cast and send us a message there. You can also leave us reviews on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're getting your podcasts from, if it allows reviews. Apple Podcasts I only mentioned because I know that Apple specifically, they only show shows in searches, or they curate how they show shows and searches based on how many reviews they have. So the more reviews we have, the more likely we are to show up in searches. So if you have an Apple account and if you haven't given us a review yet, please do that. It really does help us. We want to get the word out. We want more listeners, and we appreciate your help. Also, speaking of help, we want to let you know about the ESO Network Patreon. It's a way to help all the shows on the network. Based on how much you can contribute, you can get various tiers. They give you access to early episodes of some shows. They give you access to exclusive episodes of some shows. And they give you access to a whole exclusive ESO Network Patreon that only patrons can listen to. So to check out those different tiers and see what you can do, you can go to patreon.com/ESO Network. And if you have the funds to contribute, we'd greatly appreciate it. You can find me on 2 other shows. One is Time Streams, where my friend Juliet and I are talking about Doctor Who. And the other one is Legendary Forces, where Juliet and I are joined by Ashley, Joe, and Corey to talk about Star Wars. Those are both on hiatus right now, but you can check out the older episodes, and Time Streams in particular. I am going to make sure that I get off of hiatus this year. We have some episodes already recorded. I just need to get those edited and up. So keep watching this space for that announcement, or just keep checking your local pod supplier. Well, that's it for this week. Join us back next week when Zolo Majorina will not be joining us. And until then, this is Nathan, signing off. You have been listening to the 42 Cast, copyright 2023. Got a question for the ultimate answer? Contact us at everything@42cast.com. Theme music is Sharper Swords by Brandon Ellis. Check out more of his work at www.cityfires.com. The 42 Cast is a proud member of the ESO Network.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping at the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.